Election day is just around the corner, and there's a lot to cover before you cast your ballots.
We'll take a look at all the elections happening in our area, plus some insight into the biggest races of the night.
We'll also hear from reporters as they look inside some of the major issues facing Tompkins County and the rest of the state this year.
All that and more tonight on Election Center.
From ICTV News, this is Election Center 2022.
Good evening and welcome to ICTV's election coverage. I'm Ryan Harmon.
And I'm Brooke Vogel. As the state and nation gears for midterm elections, we all have the latest information you need to know when casting your ballot. Early voting just wrapped up today in Tompkins County, but the deadline for absentee ballots is tomorrow evening.
Polls for the general election, however, are expected to open early Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. and close at 9 p.m. No word yet on when the first batch of results can be expected, but tune into ICTV this Tuesday evening as we travel to the Board of Elections to hear from those who recently voted.
This year, several high positions in the state legislature are up for grabs, the biggest being the gubernatorial race. Incumbent Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul is set to face off against Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin. As the clock is winding down until polling places close, so is the gap between both candidates. With the latest on both campaigns and pollster results, our political analyst Jordan Broking joins us in the studio with details. Jordan?
Thanks, Brooke. A year ago, we discussed the prospects of Governor Hochul being the Democratic nominee in this year's gubernatorial race. Now with that prospect being a reality, let's dive right into her campaign and her competitor, Lee Zeldin. Hochul is from upstate New York and previously served as representative in the House and most recently the lieutenant governor to former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Since Hochul became governor due to Cuomo's resignation, if she wins this year's election, she will be the first woman ever elected to this office. As far as her policies go, Hochul plans to reduce greenhouse emissions and expand solar energy as a way to combat climate change. Additionally, Hochul is planning to have $1.2 billion worth of middle-class tax cuts and provide relief to 200,000 small businesses across the state, among other initiatives. Switching over to the Republican ticket, Lee Zeldin is from Long Island and once became the state's youngest attorney at the age of 23 before becoming a congressman in 2014. Zeldin has been very vocal against Hochul and the Democratic Party, primarily towards cashless bail laws, something he said he will repeal if elected. The pandemic and gun control are also hot-button issues for Zeldin, as he plans to end all COVID-19 mandates in addition to repealing the SAFE Act, which prevents dangerously mentally ill people from purchasing firearms. Both candidates have been hitting the ground running this past week, with First Lady Jill Biden joining Hochul on the campaign trail and Zeldin inviting Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin on the road. Now, Brooke and Ryan, both Hochul and Zeldin are not expected to slow down events as the race continues to heat up.
Jordan, what are we seeing now as far as numbers go for this race? Are there any of them leading?
Well, after the primary season wrapped up this summer, it was expected that Hochul would have a strong lead ahead of Zeldin, which is not the case anymore. Recent polls have shown that Zeldin is edging up on Hochul, with a poll done by Emerson College showing Hochul leading by 52% compared to Zeldin at 44%. This differs from another poll that just came out that shows Zeldin having a narrow lead over Hochul, with Zeldin having 48.4% and Hochul having 47.6%. Now at this point, polls are going to show some seesaw results, but the real answer will be given on election night. Ryan, back to you at the desk.
Thanks, Jordan. Now, alongside the gubernatorial races comes the race to be the next lieutenant governor. Current Lieutenant Governor and Governor Hochul's running mate, Antonio Delgado, is fighting to keep his spot against Zeldin's running mate, Allison Esposito. Delgado previously served as a U.S. representative in New York's 19th District, where he introduced several bills to Congress and was named the fourth most bipartisan member in Congress. Meanwhile, Esposito is a deputy inspector for the New York City Police Department. If elected, Esposito will work with Zeldin to get rid of the cashless bail and the Less is More Act.
Now, one of the most highly contested issues in this year's election is reproductive rights. Following the Supreme Court's ruling that said Roe v. Wade was unconstitutional, politicians are left divided on the matter. Our ICTV reporter Carolina Sadrashi spoke with people on both sides of the aisle to hear more about their sides and what they would like to see done after Election Day is over.
No racist court can take our choice.
As the midterm elections come about, a main issue that has arisen in the minds of both men and women is the topic of abortion and how it will be addressed. Common Council member Robert Contelmo spoke on how the topic of abortion affects the city of Ithaca and overall why it's an important issue for the public.
There are so many reasons that someone might have to tackle this decision. And it's not a local politician's place. It's not a state level politician's place. It's not a federal politician's place to weigh in on the individual healthcare decisions of individuals.
After the overturning of Roe v. Wade, community members have had a hand in speaking on this sensitive issue, and a woman who specializes in advocating for women's rights, executive director of the Women's Opportunity Center in Ithaca, Jan Bridgeford Smith, believes this highly sensitive topic needs to be addressed in a certain light.
If you have access, then you always have the opportunity to not use it. If you don't have access, you have no opportunity to make that decision. And in fact, what you have is a situation where, women, and it often the burden falls on women who have limited resources, or they're very young. If they are the ones who unfairly shoulder the burden when these kinds of decisions come down.
Smith not only detailed how the topic is being presented, but also how both men and women are contributing to the conversation, showing how while this is an important issue to discuss, it can also be minimized in society.
You don't ever hear about legislation to restrict men's access to a vasectomy. It's not just about having an egg, it's also about having a sperm. So they're in on the mix too.
Linda Hoffman, the chair of the Tompkins County Democratic Committee, also weighed in on how a certain group of people are also affected by abortion standards in the world today.
Populations that are most affected are people of color. Planned Parenthood of Greater New York, we have a clinic here for Planned Parenthood, one in Corning and one in Elmira. That's fortunate for us, but that's not the case. Always across even New York State.
As midterm elections approach, voters need to remember who's representing them as well, and Contelmo reminds them of that.
You have to look at the candidates, and you have to think about what are the fundamental issues at stake here, and who is going to get in the trenches and roll up their sleeves and do what's right by the people of New York.
Reporting for Election Center, I'm Carolina Chedrasky.
Thanks, Carolina. Now we move over onto other major state races. Incumbent Democrat Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli will face new Republican nominee Paul Rodriguez in the upcoming election. DiNapoli has a history of protecting taxpayer dollars through tackling corruption. He has created one of the nation's top public pension funds and restored integrity to the office since 2007. If allowed to remain in office, DiNapoli will continue to protect education and pension funds while continuing to hold major corporations accountable. Meanwhile, Republican Paul Rodriguez is running on a platform independent from activism, focusing on saving taxpayer money and lowering the cost of living for the middle class. He promises to make New York more affordable through government accountability, budget transparency, and by making the financial climate more business-friendly. And New York State will see Democratic incumbent Letitia James challenged by Republican candidate Michael Henry for New York State Attorney General. James is seeking re-election on her platform of getting deadly weapons off the street, controlling opioid production, protecting paychecks, environmental justice, and climate change. She's also running on her previous success on price gouging, data security, nursing home reform, and her crackdown on ghost guns. Republican candidate Henry is campaigning on working with law enforcement to reduce violence, addressing corruption in government, and investigating possible corruption reporting of death toll numbers from nursing homes during the heaviest times of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Shifting over to the national stage, Democratic U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer will attempt to defend his seat against Republican John Pinyon and independent LaRouche candidate Diane Sare. Schumer continues to run on his pro-working class platform, promising policies such as expanding health care, making college affordable, and addressing climate change. Republican Pinyon is representing the Republican Party with the core objectives to reduce urban child poverty, counteract inflation, and crime reduction. Independent LaRouche candidate Diane Sare opposes both political parties and is running on a platform against Wall Street in favor of returning to a gold reserve-based monetary system and the installment of a bank. Switching over to the other side of Congress, Democrat Josh Riley will face Republican Marcus Molinaro for a House seat in New York's 19th Congressional District election. Riley runs on a grassroots campaign and continues to advocate for working-class families. To better the economy of upstate New York, Riley intends to bring more manufacturing jobs to his district. Voting rights remains a priority issue for Riley, and healthcare reform is an interest of both candidates. Marcus Molinaro campaigns on protecting natural lands in his district and on strengthening the criminal justice system in upstate New York. He also plans to tackle the opioid crisis in New York State and easing New Yorkers' property tax burden to address inflation.
Turning back to state races, two candidates are facing off to represent the 52nd District in the state Senate. Democrat Leah Webb is set to face off against former Binghamton Mayor Rich David to clinch the seat. Webb is an educator at Binghamton University and is former Binghamton City Council member. Some of the key issues Webb plans to address as state assemblywoman include passing good cause legislation and advocating for funding to go towards the state's mental health and public health services. Meanwhile, one of David's main platforms is supporting and funding law enforcement while opposing bail reform. David has served as Binghamton's mayor since 2014 and is running for Senate in order to improve his region.
State Assemblywoman Anna Kells is running for re-election to represent New York's 125th district in the state assembly. Kells first won the seat in 2020 after facing numerous candidates in both the Democratic primary and general election. Now Kells is running unopposed. As an assemblywoman, Kells will work to create universal health care and child care and advocating for the criminal justice reform. Still ahead tonight on Election Center, we take a look at this year's biggest local race. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Election Center. Jumping back into Ithaca races, where the city of Ithaca is set to elect its next mayor. Here with the latest information on all three candidates is our political analyst, Ori Grady.
The stage is set for the city of Ithaca's mayoral race on November 8th. Three candidates are running for the position. Democrat Laura Lewis, Republican Zachary Wynn, and Katie Sims, aligned with the Solidarity slate. Lewis is the current mayor of Ithaca, assuming her position after former Mayor Svante Myrick resigned February earlier this year. The winner of the mayoral race on election night will serve for the remainder of the Myrick's term until just after the November 2023 election. Voters are also filling out their ballots for the city manager referendum, a position, if voted for and approved, will be filled in 2024. The position of city manager would largely overlook administrative duties related to the city. This referendum was proposed by Myrick last year. Lewis has already received 7 out of 9 endorsements from the Ithaca Common Council. She currently represents the 5th ward in the Common Council. If elected, Lewis hopes to continue to push for the Reimagining Public Safety Collaborative and Agency, presented to the council back in March. And Republican candidate and local Ithacan Zachary Wynn once ran for mayor in 2007. If elected, he plans to bring an end to the public safety process and focus on urging Cornell University to pay property taxes to the city, while reducing taxes by 50% for the Ithaca residents. And Katie Sims is a Cornell graduate and has aligned herself with the growing Solidarity slate. She's been involved with the city's Green New Deal since 2019 and wants to bring the initiative to action if elected. Sin also hopes Cornell can provide financial support to the city, money that would go to projects such as housing. Sims is endorsed by the Working Families Party and the Sunrise Movement.
Ori, do you think current mayor Laura Lewis could potentially be re-elected, or do you think voters will go for another candidate?
I think Laura Lewis is the heavy favorite to continue her position as mayor, considering the support past Mayor Svante Myrick had in the community and especially in the Common Council, who align with the policies and initiatives proposed by Lewis. But you never know. Anything can happen on election night.
Thanks, Ori. Now, other than just the mayor, the Common Council is once again updating, this due to Ward 4 in Ithaca. Tiffany Chen Kumar is now an uncontested candidate to take the seat on the council. Chen Kumar got the nomination after defeating incumbent alderperson Patrick Meller during the Democratic primary race. She's running on a grassroots campaign and is expected to fight to make Collegetown more progressive in her new role.
As Ori mentioned in his story, Ithacans are not only voting for mayor solely, but also voting on if they would like to see the city manager position be created and filled. Proposal 2 on the ballot focuses on this issue as a yes or no answer for voters to respond to. If Ithacans vote to create the new role, the city charter and municipal charter will be amended to add the role to city government, where the Common Council will appoint and supervise the individual chosen. A nationwide search is expected to begin in 2023 if approved.
Turning to county races where two locals are currently running unopposed to be re-elected to their positions. Maureen Reynolds currently serves as the county clerk, a role she has held since January of 2015. Prior to this, she served as deputy county clerk from 1993 until she assumed her current role. For her job, Reynolds oversees those in the county renew their driver's license, start a business, and accessing copies of deeds, among others. More on Reynolds and the accolade of duties she has can be found on the Tompkins County website. Another race shaping itself up in the county is for county sheriff. County Sheriff Derek Osborne is running to hold his job once again. Osborne began his law enforcement career in Cortland in 1995 as a patrol officer before transitioning to the Sheriff's Department in 2001, where he moved up through the ranks from a deputy sheriff to the role he is now. As a member of the State Sheriff's Association, Osborne has a variety of ideas, which include improving community relations, restoring fiscal responsibility, and championing alternatives to incarceration efforts. Additionally, he was at the forefront of introducing a new unarmed pilot program, which allows for certain calls to be handled by the sheriff's clerk rather than a sheriff deputy. These issues can be anything from minor property damage to larcenies.
In addition to deciding whether or not to vote for Reynolds and Osborne instead of a write-in, Tompkins County residents will also vote on whether or not to vote for a new environmental law. Proposal 1 on the ballot asks of voters if the Environmental Bond Act of 2022 should be approved. The law will also allow the sale of state bonds to fund various modes of environmental protection, such as natural restoration, resiliency, and clean energy products. The bonds will go up to $4.2 billion in the effort to supply these clean air, clean energy, and green job products.
Now turning to other towns in Tompkins County, voters across the area will be electing their next town justice. In Dryden, Jules Ravo is on the ballot to secure another term to the town court. Ravo currently holds this position alongside Town Justice Christopher Clausen, who is not up for re-election this year. Ravo brings extensive knowledge to the role as he has practiced law for over 30 years, with his Ithaca law career beginning in 2001, as he specializes in many forms of law, ranging from family, personal injury, and business.
Meanwhile in Groton, Randy Jackson is looking for another term as Town Justice. Jackson currently serves on the town court with fellow Town Justice Paul Lang, who's currently not up for re-election. And in Lansing, Maura Kennedy Smith is also looking for another chance at being Town Justice. Kennedy Smith has served as Town Justice since January of 2019. As she's the only person running for her election, she's expected to move on to her 4th year as Justice.
Also in Lansing tonight, the town's highway superintendent seat is up for grabs. Incumbent Michael Maselli is striving to get another term in office, a race that is currently not being contested by anyone else. Maselli's roles include overseeing construction on Lansing's roads and working with the Highway Department on implementing updates and construction.
Turning over now to Ulysses, where an election is brewing over an open seat on the town board. Elizabeth Weatherby is tossing her hat into the ring after having working 15 years of experience in environmental permitting and consulting services. She was recently appointed to the town's Youth Commission and hopes the role as a board member will integrate into her commitment towards youth and broader community. No one is currently facing off her against this time.
After the break, we take a look into how redistricting is expected to shake things up next year and the importance of voting. Stick around, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Election Center. We focused on the races and key issues at the stake this year, but now comes the time to focus on voting. This year's election is the last one to not experience a shakeup as New York State is undergoing redistricting, changing up future voting locations for voters in the area. ICTV's Julia Davis is live in studio to break it down for us. Julia?
Yeah, that's right, Ryan. After a shakeup with a federal judge last spring who temporarily blocked the state from redistricting, Ithaca is now prepared to adjust where their voters will vote. Currently, Ithaca is broken up into 5 wards, with Ward 1 making up the West Side and South Hill, Ward 2 largely affecting downtown Ithaca, Wards 3 and 4 making up Collegetown and the East Hill, and Wards 5 spreading out across northern Ithaca and Cayuga Heights. Now, this is only expected to stay in effect until the end of the year, with a new redistricting map taking place on New Year's Day 2023. As you can see on your screen, Ward 1 will take priority over the west end of Ithaca, but will now split the South Hill with Ward 3. Ward 2 will still prominently oversee the downtown area, but it will gain a major part of northern Ithaca towards the farmers market region. Ward 3 will still hold the East Hill and parts of the South Hill, while Ward 4 will gain more ground in Collegetown and the East Hill. Ward 5 will still oversee northern Ithaca. The majority of voters in the area will not be affected by the district they will vote in, but those who are in the South Hill and East Hill should watch these maps closely to prepare for next year's election. Brooke and Ryan, back to you guys.
Thanks, Julia. Now, as a part of our election center tradition, we love to talk to the community members around this time of year about the importance of voting. ICTV's Andreas Rendon went down to a democracy event yesterday to speak with voters on the issue and why they're choosing to vote.
Election day is just around the corner, but community members here at the Southside Community Center are getting excited and making that final push to get everyone out to vote. The Your Voice, Your Vote Tompkins Civic Empowerment Coalition, or YV2 for short, held the event to show the importance of voting and what is at stake in this upcoming election season.
We believe everyone should play an active part in government and civic affairs and vote in all elections, whether local, state, national or national. Our democracy depends on it.
The 2-hour event offered community members the opportunity to register to vote if they haven't done so already. Guest speakers from groups like No Mas Lágrimas, Vote 411, and Green Star Co-op shared what the event means to them.
I think it's important to bring together like-minded organizations to show our community how important it is to exercise your voice and your vote, as the event says. And as a cooperative, Green Star is happy to be here. Remember, democratic control is foundational to cooperative principles. So being here in solidarity with all these amazing organizations that are trying to increase voter participation and civic engagement is really important.
Speakers talked about the issues that the Ithaca community is facing today, such as the increasing housing costs and a decreasing sense of safety in neighborhoods.
You can't get any of the other things that are supports and services and rights for people around economics or healthcare or cultural rights or social rights if you don't understand that we get that through voting.
Issues with elections were also discussed, from some polls being closed down on election day to how accessible those polls really are.
Being involved in the civic life of the community is a key aspect of what the Independence Center and the Disability Rights Movement and the Independent Living Movement is fighting for.
That the right to participate, to be informed about participation, to tear down the barriers that prevent them from being committed members of their own society, from upholding the norms that help them to achieve the goals they want, that it is possible for all of us working together to actually do that.
As you can see, everyone here at the event is pumped and ready to go to cast their ballot. Now remember, Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th, and the polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. For other voting information, you can go on to vote.org or also Vote 411 to get all the things you need to know before Election Day comes. Reporting for ICTV, I'm Andreas Rendon.
Thanks, Andreas. And as you know, it's very important voting. It's one of our basic civil duties. And now I know I vote. Brooke, I'm sure you vote.
Oh, I voted the second I turned 18. It felt like tradition. Felt like I had to do it.
Exactly. I mean, I've grown up knowing people all around me always voted, going to polling locations and things like that. And it's truly one of the most important things that we can do as Americans.
I completely agree.
Well, here's a list of all the polling locations and times where you can go and cast your ballot. Polling places open at 6 a.m. and close at 9 p.m. However, the deadline to hand in early voting and absentee ballots is tomorrow evening.
And that does it for this year's Election Center. I'm Brooke Vogel.
And I'm Ryan Harmon. Be sure to tune in this Tuesday for our Election Night Special, hosted by Andreas Rendon, live on ICTV and ICTV.org at 9 p.m. Andreas and the rest of the election team, including myself, will take you along as we get all the latest results in this year's election.
In the meantime, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram on ICTV News 607. Thanks for watching and have a good night.